Thank you, and welcome to Caliper's webinar, How Are Top Companies Selling Through These Tough Times? My name is Patrick Sweeney, and I'm the Executive Vice President of Caliper. Today, I'm very pleased to share with you insights from several experts on how to sell in these difficult economic times. I'd like to also mention that all registrants will receive an email with links to slides and a recording of today's presentation. Now I'd like to introduce our guest speakers. With me today is President and CEO of Caliper, Herb Greenberg. Herb founded Caliper nearly a half century ago. Since then, Caliper has advised more than 25,000 companies, from Fortune 500 companies to some of the fastest growing smaller firms, on hiring, employee development, team building, and organizational development. Also, we'll be speaking with Gerhard Schwantner, founder and publisher of Selling Power magazine. He'll be sharing with us some insights on what sales leaders should be doing during this tough economic time and how to keep their salespeople motivated. In addition, we'll be talking with Dan Sheridan, who is the Vice President of Sales at Extensis. Dan will be speaking to us about how he, as a sales leader, has been able to motivate his staff and increase sales by 40%. Also, later in the presentation, we'll be speaking with Tim Barr, a Vice President of Sales at Telesource Systems, and Chris Pearson, the Director of Sales at Stratic Systems. Both will take us back to the dot-bomb era in the early 2000s and share how they've been able to improve business as well as prepare themselves for the current economic situation. Now I'd like to go over what we'll be discussing during today's session. We'll be going over the qualities that make salespeople successful, how to set a confident tone in a shaky economic situation, how to ensure that you have the right salespeople, how to keep your top performers engaged, and how to create a winning sales team. So, Herb, you founded Caliper nearly a half century ago, and since then Caliper has gone on to help companies not just hire top talent, but to also develop that talent, to develop teams. You've worked in leadership development, everything from selection through succession planning, but the foundation of your very early work was in sales. That's where the original article in the Harvard Business Review was, in which you identified the qualities that it takes to succeed in sales. Can you quickly tell us what those qualities are and how they're essential regardless of the times? And then what I want you to talk about are some other qualities that have to kick in, particularly when the times are tough. So what does it take for someone to succeed in sales?
They should start out by having three elements: empathy, the ability to sense the reactions of another person, and in effect to be able to use their feelings, their interests, to help you with your sale. Ego drive is that hunger to get the yes as a key means of gaining personal gratification. It's the yes that makes the individual feel better about him or herself. And ego strength, the ability to take rejection. Selling is a game of failure, and you've got to be able to take that beating, see it as a challenge, go after the next person, and close that next deal.
Let's talk about that, because I think particularly in these tough times,
Becomes very much a factor. Right?
Yes. Yeah. In other words, because the rejection just happens a lot more.
Rejection will happen a great deal more because nobody has the money. Let's all wait till next year. Let's wait till the economy turns around, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Because in normal times, a salesperson can go through and get rejected and say, oh, geez, okay, I know what just happened there. Maybe I asked for the order too early, or maybe I didn't know enough about my competition, or maybe I didn't know enough about my client. And so they can view it as a learning experience, and then they can change it the next time. But when the going gets tough, as you said, and the rejections come time after time after time, and it's not like you can learn from them, what gets you through that?
More than ever, a salesperson has to love selling, because if you don't like it, you're going to hate it even worse with these times, with the increase, like as you said, with the increase of rejection and so on.
Right, right. And that rejection could ultimately create anxiety for people who possess less of the ability to overcome those situations. So then you can find yourself with salespeople doubting themselves, which comes across to the prospects as them doubting your company. And you don't want that, especially during a time like this when confidence can really set you apart from the rest. I'm really intrigued by that idea, Herb. And to illustrate that further, I'd like to introduce Gerhard Schwantner. Gerhard, among so many other things, is the founder and publisher of Selling Power magazine. And I know you also have interviews you do in a video format. You run leadership conferences. So Selling Power has really become much more than just a magazine.
Yeah, we are an integrated media company, and we help sales managers win.
You really do. 3 or 4 times a year, you pull together some of the thought leaders in sales, and I was fortunate enough to be speaking at your last conference. It was most informative because you had some of the best and brightest minds in sales leadership there, talking about how we deal with what's going on right now in these very tough times. One of the notions certainly that came up was the idea of replacing fear with confidence. Can you talk with us a little bit about how sales leaders are doing that?
Well, there are a lot of dynamics going on in the marketplace that tend to confuse people, and leaders need to assume a different role in those tougher times, which is that the first thing is to tell people not to overthink the problem. A lot of people are trying to educate themselves. They want to understand everything. And it's like trying to boil the ocean. We never have enough data about anything, and no amount of information will remove the nagging residue of uncertainty to what this economy is all about. And we are obsessing with questions like what caused this, who is responsible, where did we go wrong, and we need to rephrase those questions. You know, we need to zoom back from the global problem, and we need to ask ourselves, how specifically does this impact our business? So an exercise like this will help people to focus on their present strength. They'll look at possible threats in a realistic way. They will come up with new ideas on how to boost productivity, and they help people focus on new opportunities. So we don't want to get fixated on the news. We want to focus on the business in a rational way, and we want to focus on our customers.
As a leader's role, then, certainly you have to empathize and you listen where there is fear, but you've got to replace that fear with hope and confidence. And you're talking about focusing on the right messages and perhaps changing those messages because the old messages don't work anymore.
Exactly. A leader is always a merchant of hope. The way I see it is, every time we wake up, we think about new possibilities, and we float some balloons in the air. And those balloons, hope, lifts us up. And if somebody, like the economy, pops a few of our balloons, what do we need to do? We're crashing on the ground, and we realize we need to re-energize hope. We need to create new scenarios, new possibilities, and we need to inflate new balloons in order to lift us up. This is really the time in sales to go on the offense. This is not the time to crawl under your desk and suck your thumb and complain about the dire situation in the world. The world is not coming to an end. This is time to go on the offensive and look at new and fresh opportunities out in the marketplace. And that means changing your strategy. And then once you are with the customer, you want to resist the temptation in saying, Patrick, we lowered our price by 20% so that we can meet your budget. That's not the way to approach a sale. We need to find out what is Patrick worried about and then work on reducing the fear and making Patrick aware that this is actually a strategy that lowers the risk of your business so we can maintain our value, so we don't have to discount the price, but we reduce the risk and we maintain our price.
So rather than oftentimes when people are concerned about money, salespeople think about lowering the price, your message instead is to try to make me feel safe.
Right, because what do the people want in a time of crisis? They want safety. So if you can tell people this is safe, and what we need to do is make our clients aware that our risk is lower. Purchasing from us is a lower risk, and here's why. Here's 3 reasons why.
How does a salesperson in a time like this determine whether a client or a prospect is the right place to focus on?
Well, every prospect comes from a different slice of the market. Focus on those that are the most promising, and then you use your judgment. Get yourself a little bit more educated before you actually see the prospect. So there are a lot of marketing services out there that give you information about the prospect's condition, and you can read the news reports. Also, work smarter, not harder. And a lot of people say, well, here's a great prospect, and they have all that enterprise information about the prospect, but not the personal information. So there are information services that taps into LinkedIn or Facebook, where you get the information and you know that Patrick is the vice president of this company and he likes fly fishing. And here's some photos of his family. So all of a sudden you're armed with personal information about the prospect that makes that conversation a lot more enjoyable and a lot more productive.
Gerhard, I'm curious about what you're hearing among the sales leaders of companies you're talking with. I mean, one of the banes of any sales leader's existence is the notion that you've got 20% are the top performers and 20% are the bottom performers, and then that middle 60%. And during tough times, how much of that middle 60% can really rise to the occasion?
Well, I think there's a tremendous opportunity for taking the middle 60% and inject a dose of productivity into that middle to the core performers. And the best way to do it is to think of better methodologies for running sales and applying better technologies for making this a lot more effective. At this point, there are over 850 what I call Sales 2.0 technologies available that are point solutions that can dramatically improve productivity. I'll give you an example. I just talked to a manager from Nortel, and they have gotten a proposal software that takes care of quotes and proposals in a way that salespeople spend about 25 to 40% less time in preparing the proposals. So one of the sales managers actually came up with an idea and saying, why don't we use a proposal as a marketing tool and broadcast email a proposal for a specific solution in one specific vertical market to 5,000 people and see what happens? And lo and behold, people got intrigued because they had a working document that said, how can you do this for that low price? I want to know more about it. And that turned into very productive sales calls. So what I'm saying is that problems are nothing but wake-up calls for creativity. So my suggestion to everybody out there is to examine every single step of your sales process and see how you can do it better.
Should this be a time for sales leaders to be weeding out their marginal performers?
Absolutely. And I think you want to do two things. One is you want to get your top performers to rally around you and reassure them that their jobs are safe because they perform for the company. And roll out an incentive program that rewards higher performance, that rewards creativity, that rewards salespeople who pursue new opportunities and bring in new business. But at the same time, create a disincentive for the lower 20% where you tell them that you have the next 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, whatever time period you feel comfortable with, to improve. And if at the end of that deadline that you said they're not improving, have maybe a remedial program thing kick in, that they get extra coaching, they get extra training, they get extra help to achieve their goals. And if that second deadline expires without any change, then make sure that they work for your competition. Get them off the payroll.
So give them a reference for the competition.
Exactly.
That's good. I like that. Well, I know Mary Delaney over at Career Builder was telling us at this conference you had, Gerhard, that actually sales positions are up 20%. Mm-hmm. So sales people are still hiring for sales positions.
Yeah.
And salespeople being competitive by nature, as we know, they want to be not just winning for themselves, but they want to be on a winning team.
And that's very, very important to know that companies, when they look at salespeople, they need to realize that salespeople join companies, but they leave managers. We are all attracted by the big corporations like Oracle or IBM. It's very prestigious to work for them. But why do people leave those great companies? Usually because they came into a dead-end spot where they work for a manager they can't get along with. And that's why great companies spend a lot of time on the human capital. They want to find out what rewards do people want. And some people want a pat on the back. Some people want recognition in front of everybody. And that's a great source of pride because the number one thing that people look for besides money is meaning. And that's something a lot of companies overlook. And that's where you can make the greatest improvements